The Queen's Talk, where we honor and celebrate women on their self-love journey, where we share our stories about how we overcame past trauma and where we are now. Welcome to the Queen's Talk, Queens. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Queen's Talk. I am Leslie from Brown Girls Embrace, your self-love coach. And here on the Queen's Talk, we talk about how we overcame past trauma and where we are now. And we emphasize self-love and how we can become better. And why we like to help other Black women like ourselves. And tonight we have Latrice with us. Is it Latrice? Am I saying your name? Latrice?
Yes, Latrice, that's correct.
We have her tonight, and she is a diabetic, well, a previous type 1 diabetic like myself. And she's going to talk a little bit about her journey and where she is now. So can you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us your name and where you're from?
Yes, my name is Latrice Hawkins Lights. Some of you may know me in my campaign. I ran for Lieutenant Governor of the state of Maryland with Mr. Ashwani James during the 2022 primary election. And currently a resident of Prince George's County, Maryland. Actually, I've been here my whole life for the most part. And yes, as Leslie said, I am a previous juvenile type.
Yes. I don't know where your mic is. Comment in the chat if you can hear her. If anybody's in the chat can comment, because it sounds a little muffy to me. Ask in the chat, comment if we sound okay to y'all. But I got the fact you from PG County, Maryland. You was a previous. No, yeah. Tell us about that journey. You've been running for mayor, was it?
I ran for Lieutenant Governor of Maryland. Can you hear me a little bit better if I speak up?
Yes.
Okay. So let me move in some. So 2022, I ran for Lieutenant Governor of the state of Maryland, and this was actually a year after my transplant, which we'll get into down the line. But yes, a great experience. I met a lot of people, whether they were politicians or just your general public residents of Maryland. It was awesome. It was a awesome campaign. We did run. Ours was no money. We wanted to kind of dismiss that, so we were grassroots campaign, and that also made it very exciting because we were coming at it with a different angle, a different approach.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so yeah, we can hear you. Susan says I can hear you both of you clearly. Okay, great. Thanks for the comment. And anybody, if you have questions for us tonight, please comment in the chat. Join the conversation. Like we appreciate the participation tonight, and we want to answer any questions that you guys have for us. So don't hesitate to comment in the chat, and we'll answer you as soon as we can. Okay, so tell us about. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I've been a type 1 diabetic since I was 9, and it did affect my self-esteem. It did affect my life. When I was younger, I think I was telling you on the phone when I was younger, I wasn't able to go to sleepovers with my friends because their mom was like, well, she's a diabetic. I don't want to go. I don't want her to go and I have to take care of her, make sure she's good. So life was difficult for me growing up with diabetes. How was life growing up for you? And what age were you diagnosed with diabetes?
So I was a year old when I was diagnosed, and I'm sorry that you actually had to go through that.
Thank you.
I don't ever remember a time where my friends' parents didn't kind of embrace me in a way. They all looked at me as like, oh, she's another daughter. And I think because my circle has always been really, really small. And even as a child, knowing that, okay, I have to take this insulin and make sure I have my meals because we're going to be playing and being really active and burning this energy and things like that. I never had a parent's mother say or father say, no, she can't come over and spend the night because I don't want to be responsible, or no, she can't go to the amusement park with us because I don't want something to happen and I'm held responsible. So I didn't have to go through that, thank goodness.
That's a blessing. But how was things in school? Because for me, I'll speak for myself. For me in school, because as diabetics, we have to use the bathroom a lot, especially if our sugar's high or we drinking a lot. It goes straight through us. They thought I was making it up. They thought that was like she just playing because she don't want to do her work, and not legit had to go to the bathroom. How was that for you in school?
I actually do not remember going through issues with frequent urination. Now, when I started my menstrual cycle, that was a whole nother story. So, but my teachers were really, they were really understanding. My mom would have at the beginning of the year, every single school year, she would have a meeting with the school nurse
Okay.
and my teachers. And once I got to like junior high school, where you have multiple teachers, she would actually meet with all of them. So they were all aware and knew, okay, so Latrice is the diabetic. And in most cases, I was the only diabetic in the school. Regardless of what school I went to, I was the only diabetic. So I really didn't run into those issues.
Okay. So how was childhood for growing up with you with diabetes? Can you describe that for us?
It had its ups and downs. So I started going to camp when I was about 6 years old, a diabetic camp. And they pretty much teach you how to care for yourself. So you're calorie counting, you're checking your blood sugar, you're picking your sites as to where you're going to inject yourself. You're doing your own injections. If you're mixing insulin, they're teaching you how to mix. They're telling you the reason that you're taking one insulin over another or both together, what they do inside of you, how they work. So they go over all of this information with you, as well as teach you how to properly exercise without burning too much energy. So we would go on hikes in the woods and have like fire fire pit and tell stories and horseback riding and swimming and tennis and things of that sort to kind of make you feel like you're not out of the norm, you are normal. But everybody at camp was also a diabetic, so you were not the only diabetic. You're all learning together. So that was a lot of fun, and it also helped me with going back to school because then it then made me in charge of my own diabetes, and I was kind of like, I can look out for myself. I can do this. I know what I'm doing at like 6 and 7 years old.
Okay. And that I think that camp thing is really. I should have went. I went to a grieving camp. So my father committed suicide, so I went to a grieving camp. I didn't go to a diabetic camp, and it sounded like it was very helpful and beneficial for you because I'm still learning to this day how to exercise without making my sugar drop too low. You know, that's a struggle trying to carb count in. But it is encouraging when people are there, like you can kind of learn from each other, benefit from each other when you're at a camp together, you know, understanding how things work with your own body as well. Um, Miss Susan says, tell her how the Duval staff drink your juice. You went to Duval?
So Miss Susan is my mother.
Oh, okay.
Um, Yeah, so in high school, I went to Duval Senior High School, and I had my mom would always send juice to the nurse's office at the beginning of the year, and as I needed to drink them, I could, and if I ran out, just let her know, and then she would provide more. This one particular time, I went to get a juice because my sugar was getting a little low. I could kind of feel it and get to the nurse's office and she's like, "We don't have any juice in here for you." And I'm like, "Remember my mom brought it and we talked to you?" And she's like, "I'm so sorry. I do remember." She said, "But sometimes they have night classes and then the people will just come in here and they'll just take whatever. If I have crackers or juice or bottled water, or they don't care, they'll just take it and do whatever." So I didn't have any juice that day. So that was a little bit of an uproar because then it was like, okay, so now the school nurse is trying to rush to the cafeteria to see if they have
Yeah.
something. So it became that type of thing before the diabetic patient actually the sugar gets too low and they pass out and then you have to call 911. So those things are important to have um, a little stash of something on standby. After that incident, we just started storing stuff in my locker, which worked out a lot better because then you just go to your locker and have your snack and keep going.
Yeah. I thought that I had maybe it was me. I thought I had special privileges growing up. I mean, not growing up, going to school as a diabetic because my mom had a relationship with the nurse in the school or whatever. So she said she would tell me like sometimes food would need to be heat up, like because I wouldn't eat the lunch food because I was a picky eater too, and
Mhm.
I had to eat a certain amount of carbs. And so she was like, "Well, go to the nurse office and tell her to heat up your lunch or whatever." And I said, "Hey, my mom said, can you heat up my lunch in the microwave?" And she was just like, "No." Like I didn't have good experiences growing up as a diabetic. She was
Oh,
just like,
wow.
"No, we can't hate up your food." And I came home and I told my mom I didn't eat today. She said, "Why didn't you eat today?" I said, "Well, she wouldn't eat my food, so I didn't eat." So I feel like my mom went up there and she was just like, "Well, we can't heat up kids' food." And we was like, "We had a conversation with you earlier about her being able to use a microwave if she needs to use it." So it was just different experience
Oh,
for me. So how did diabetes affect you throughout life before the transplant? And then we'll get into the segue of your transplant.
okay. So it was like the end of the 90s. I was 18 years old. I was in a near fatal car accident. I was the passenger. The driver fell asleep. We hit a tree head on. And it, I had to have reconstructive surgery to the left side of my face.
Wow.
I was flown from the scene of the accident. I had to have 2 feet of small intestines removed. That was in April. It was on Good Friday. And we found out later on that day after those two surgeries that my back was also broke. My L5, the disc was broken 3 different places. Um, that experience was very traumatizing, not just to me, but to my entire family. Um, Going through that was an experience that I will never ever forget. As long as my parents, they were all there by my side. But I do remember like bits and pieces. I was in and out of consciousness the whole time, so I can remember being pulled away, the driver pulling me away from the car. I can remember people stopping, help. I can remember when the ambulance came and the first nurse checked me, and she said, "Just stick with me. I'm going to call back to come pick us up." And I can remember them moving really fast from the back of the ambulance because it was all lit up, running me over to the helicopter. And I knew that that was the helicopter because when we got inside, they cut everything off of you. They don't waste any time internal bleeding, outer bleeding. They cut everything off of you. And I just remember them saying, "Go, go, go," and you can feel the helicopter taking off. So that's how I knew I was in a helicopter. I passed out again, and the next time I came to, it was just like a movie. I can remember the mask coming down over my face, and then that was it. I was out. Came to after that, my mom, my stepdad, and my aunt were in the hall with me, not knowing that it was me because I was so swollen. My armband actually said 25-year-old male John Doe, but the nurse read the chart, and I was able to tell them, so I was able to tell them, like, my name's Latrice Hawkins, I'm 18 years old, and I'm a diabetic. I said I'm a type 1 diabetic. They kind of jot down, and they'll take what you say until they get further information. So they have on the chart that it was Latrice Hawkins, and they read the name off. The nurse read the name off and said, "Latrice, say hi." And I couldn't see out of the eye because it was just a done deal at that point. I can remember waving at my mom with the little bit of energy that I had, and I said her name in a really, really low voice because I had just lost so much blood. I was just completely out of it. And I remember her just kind of taking a deep breath, like sigh, and then she started crying and ended up passed out again. So just a lot of in and out during that time. I was medevac to Prince George's Hospital Center, and then from there, for the back injury, I was transferred to Georgetown, where they just kind of took over the place. Yeah, so that was 18. Then, about 5 or 6 years later, I was healed and released, and I could walk again. I had to learn how to feed myself again,
Mm.
talk clearly, things like that. But about 6 years after that, after being released, I got married and I had a son. Now the pregnancy as being a type 1 diabetic was a lot. I mean, a lot of work, a lot of responsibility. But, me checking my blood sugar 2 to 3 times a day to me checking my blood sugar 6 times.
Wow.
and then you inject as you go. It got to the point where I was checking both sides of the fingers.
Mm-hmm.
Then I ran out. So I'm talking to the nurses like, I don't have any more fingers, and they're starting to tackle us. Like, what else can we do? And they're like, oh, they're trying to think of things. And I was like, look, we don't like diabetics to mess with the feet, but for this situation, is it okay if I check most of the on my toes? And they were like, well, we just don't want you to do it all the time. So do it just enough to give the fingers time to heal and then go back to doing the fingers. So we're talking about fingers, thumbs, both sides. We're talking about trying to do the middle because there's a nerve in the middle, and that's why the middle hurts so bad because it's a nerve. So we were doing both sides of each finger, both sides of the thumb, and then we would do the toes. That's how often I was checking my blood sugar. I had a lot of luck because I didn't know that when they say the baby takes everything from you, they literally take everything from you. So you eat a meal, that's their meal. So in most cases, people will double. But as a diabetic, it's not good for us to double up on the meals because we're still working on the blood sugar. And then that's also making the baby even bigger. So it's a lot of mathematics that goes into having a baby. But I listened to everything my doctors told me to do, and again, just being patient during the process. He turned out to be healthy. When he was born, he came about a month early, so he was 5 pounds 12 ounces. So he was a pretty good sized baby. Um, and he's actually doing better than I was. My blood sugar a while to come back around and say, oh, hey, it's just us again. It's just the two of us again versus it was the three of us. It was me, my son, and the diabetes. So once things got caught back up, then I got back on my regular routine. I did really well until
Scoot up a little bit.
oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Can you hear me? I hear some feedback. That's a buzz. Do you hear it?
Mm-mm.
Okay, maybe it's just on my end. But so my son was born in 1999. So all of that happened in 99. And I did really well up until 2014. In 2014, we discovered that I had two fibroid tumors had attached
Oh.
themselves to my uterus. And then I also had endometriosis. So I was having a hysterectomy for that. That was in 2014. In 2019, I had a mass that attached itself to my left ovary,
Whoa.
and it
Goodness.
began to twist itself into a knot. And it
Mm.
stopped me from using the restroom, whether it was one or two. And I would vomit everything that went in came back up. So just trying to stay hydrated and drink water, it would come back up. Um, I went to the emergency room. I went to go to two emergency rooms. The first emergency room said that it was fibroids again. And I'm like, this is not fibroids. We've had that before. I know it's not. I want to go to a different emergency room, and they pinpointed exactly what it was. Long story short, I had to go into emergency surgery that night to have that mass removed. But as soon as I removed it, I started feeling a lot better. And things went well. That was 19. Um, that was May 2nd of 2019. And by the end of May, I've been diagnosed with what's called sarcoidosis. Are you
I was
familiar
like,
with that?
sarcoidosis.
hmm
Mm-hmm.
So sarcoidosis, with me, it gave me little like maneuvers all over my skin in different places, and they were very, very painful. I saw a rheumatologist to just kind of go over the pain and what it might be. They ran a lot of tests and determined that it was sarcoidosis. And getting older with diabetes and learning more and more about the body and how it really, really breaks down the immune system when you have it long term. And it can affect you in different ways and cause, or not necessarily cause, but it can allow other ailments to kind of
Yeah.
come to take over. So these are things that wasn't told to me, so I had no idea. So I walked into all these situations like, what is wrong with me now? What is going on? Not knowing that diabetes can cause all of these issues,
Yeah.
as well as nerve damage and damage to the back of the eyes and things of the sort.
And that's the thing that people don't understand diabetes. With diabetes, we don't heal as fast as others. So it sounds like with the car accident, it was a triple effect. It affected your pregnancy. Am I right? The
Actually, it did not. So with the car accident and having the two hooks, two screws, and two rods in the L5, the surgeon that placed him, he did it so strategically. It was almost like it was all he fixed it in a way so it was just like it was clean. So if you were to X-ray it, you wouldn't see at all. So that's
okay.
a well of a job he did. Um, the I'm sorry. The pregnancy with the baby sitting on the front side didn't do anything in regards to the back. So I didn't have any issues regarding the car accident. All of the issues I had with my son was strictly diabetes. It was almost like
Oh,
the
okay, got you.
diabetes was fighting my son. Like, no, it was here first. It was like that type thing.
Oh, yeah. That's the thing. I don't have any children. I'm 33 and I don't have any children yet. And I am scared to have children because I'm older. And I don't know if that's too old, but um, yeah,
I
I'm
don't think
33.
it's too old. That well, because I said because as type ones, we're automatically high risk.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
So so I don't think that would change anything. If if you wanted to experience having a child, I'm saying it's definitely worth it. I love my son to pieces. He'll be 24 in
Oh,
May, and yeah, so he's doing he's extra. I'm always on him though. Watch what you're eating. Don't eat too much of that. Don't do that. And he's like, Mom, I exercise. My pancreas is fine, and I'm like, it's just me. I'm just a mom, and I worry.
yeah. You don't want him to go through what you went through. I get it.
Exactly, exactly.
So Dewan says, I remember when you were breastfeeding Darius. You know who that is?
I actually didn't breastfeed. I do.
Breast. I mean, bed. Oh, no. I remember when you was on bed rest with Darius.
Oh, bed rest.
Yeah, I can
Yes,
hear you.
I was. Pretty much. So my first trimester was horrible. Of course, you're just finding out your body's going through all these changes. You're constantly sick. Driving even became an issue during that time just because I wasn't used to it. I was used to being able to get in the car and, I could tell if my sugar was dropping or not. But with your pregnancy, it can kind of come on pretty quick, which is something that I still talk about even outside of being pregnant, the difference in those highs and lows, dropping too fast and dropping slow. It's a
Yeah.
difference in, and sometimes we can feel and sometimes we can't. But yes, I was on bed rest with Darius. He's right. That's my play brother.
Okay.
But yeah, so I was on bed rest.
Yeah. And
Pretty
so you said,
my like second and third trimester, I was on bed rest.
oh, and you said so the diabetes affected the pregnancy, and that's why you were having so many. So how was it having to add sarcoidosis on top of that, like with the diabetes? Because my aunt
Sarcoidosis,
has my aunt
it's
has sarcoidosis
a
and she's
lot.
on oxygen.
She's on oxygen,
Mhm.
so it's more respiratory.
Mhm.
Uh, Mine is sarcoidosis of the skin. So I just get
Oh
those.
wow! I
I
didn't
get
know it was
those there are different types of that. I didn't know that either till I was diagnosed with it. And I'm be honest, it scared me because I didn't know what it was. So it just came on as pain. And I have pictures where you can see these nodules are all in different places, but they hurt so bad. The smallest one can give you the most pain. The big one, I mean, they're just all so painful. So I was scared because I didn't know what it was. And it got to the point where I remember crying to my husband and saying, "Babe, what is wrong with me? Why do I keep going through this?" Because it was like one thing after another. It was like, okay, boom, we removed the mass removed, we got that taken care of. So you're thinking, okay, well now I can go back to life, and then sarcoidosis kicks in, and it was just constantly thing after thing. Then they also said I have a mild case of neuropathy in the feet,
Oh, wow.
so that was bothering me as well, and it was just like I can't explain it. It just was taking me through so much all at one time. But it was very, very scary, just very scary. And I think it was because all of those things were going on at one time. Um, and then the transplant comes into play after that because it was like,
Okay. So how was that presented? Like that's what I want to say. How was the transplant presented and why did they even present that to you?
so the transplant came about because after sarcoidosis, then I started going through that sugar dropping like really, really fast. So,
Oh,
like I could be sitting here talking to you and I'm fine, and then 2 minutes later, it's like I just start going down, and it was
wow.
happening on a regular basis where I would just completely pass out. So one
What?
particular time, I was on the phone talking to my husband. We're having a conversation just like you and I are doing right now, and he says the phone dropped, and he said he could kind of hear my speech starting to slur, but the whole time he's hearing that on the other end, I'm on my end trying to get juice and stuff in me, and it's just not working. So calories were burning that fast, and all I was doing was sitting still.
Was that the medicine you was taking it for it to drop or how why was it dropping so fast?
They described it as just long-term diabetes. There was really like not a direct answer for it. It
Oh,
wasn't like she's allergic to the insulin or anything like that. It just was long term. So at that time I was 43 years old. So I had been a diabetic for 42 years. And it was almost like maybe the diabetes was thinking like, okay, hey, so I'm old, so we're old. Because most people that have had diabetes for 40, 50 some odd years, they're usually older. They're not like in our age range. So it was almost like the diabetes kind of had a mind of its own. And I'm on the outside, like fighting it, like, no, we're going to do this. We're going to take this juice in. We're going to get this sugar in. We're going to do something. And it's fighting me the whole way. So I went through two of those major drops really fast and
mm,
brought it to endocrinologist attention. And after that second one, he said, I want you to come in tomorrow. And, they're specialists, so usually they're booked up. He was
mm.
like, I'm squeezing you in tomorrow. So I went to the appointment and he went over some of my numbers and he was like, Latrice, I don't want you to say yes or no. I want you to take this class. And after the class, then you answer. And I'm like, class for what? And he was like, I think you would be a good candidate for the pancreas transplant. Keep in
Mhm.
mind, he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 9. So he was also
Oh, nice.
diabetic.
I was
So
diagnosed at 9.
he could relate. So
Yep.
so I was like, all right, I'll take the class and we'll see. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for my husband and I waiting for the class, we're doing our own research and we're reading up on it and like, sounds interesting. So we take the class, and after the class, during the class, they go over everything. They check your insurance. They let you know if you're eligible. You meet the surgeon. You meet everybody that you'll be in contact with afterwards. So it was just like one big group session of you just pretty much meeting everybody and going over everything that will happen. And he said he was like the surgeon said the thing that might get you the most, which it usually does, is I have to do a long incision down your stomach. And I said, I already have one of those because I had one from the car accident.
Oh, wow,
So
okay.
I was like, I already have one of those. So that wasn't a big deal to me at all. So you got to remember the car accident, I was cut down the front and then I had back surgery. So I'm cut down the back.
Oh,
So I'm
wow.
front and back. Um, yeah, so I said, okay, I feel really good after talking to the surgeon in regards to the transplant. And my husband and I went home, talked about it some more, and we both agreed like we probably need to jump on this. So we took the next steps. It's a lot of pre-op appointments that you do have to go through in regards
Yeah.
to the transplant. They take a lot of blood as well because they're matching the whole entire time that you're waiting. And your wait is that you're waiting to be placed on the transplant list.
So what
Once
are the
you're,
qualifications of it? I'm just sorry. What are like does your A1C have to be a certain
Mhm.
number?
They didn't ask me about my A1C, but I'm not going to say that they didn't check it because during that blood work that they're constantly doing, they probably are checking your A1C as well. But they never mentioned A1C to me. The big thing was the BMI, which is your body mass index. They
Okay.
want to make sure if you're slightly overweight or what they would say is overweight, then they do want you to lose some. That was
Mhm.
a they want to make sure your cardio is intact. They want to make sure your heartbeat can handle. I think it's a certain number that they have to get to, so they take you as high as you possibly can. They're doing a stress test on the treadmill, the whole nine. So they're doing absolutely everything. You do a sleep apnea test. When I say they go over everything, they go over everything. Um,
So anybody could apply, or do you have to have a certain amount of like anybody could be a candidate to
you,
get a
you
transplant?
this is only for type 1 diabetics,
Uh-huh.
and they only do certain age. So like they wouldn't do a teenager. They
Okay.
wouldn't do an adolescent. So you
Okay.
have to be in that certain age group, which you definitely fit in that category. Um, and then the other thing is your endocrinologist has to sign off on that as well. So they want to make sure you're being seen by endocrinologists because some type ones are actually followed by their primary doctor. But for a transplant, a pancreas transplant, they want you to be followed by an endocrinologist. Um, Also, the other thing with my transplant is I only needed a pancreas. Most of the time, they will do a pancreas and a kidney together.
Okay.
So that was the one thing with me also was that I only needed the pancreas. I didn't need a kidney.
Okay. So how was life after? So you and your husband, how long was the process before you got accepted?
So each patient is different. I do have to be clear of that because I was wondering the same thing. Like, well, where am I going to be when I get the call? What time are they going to call? I had like questions like that, and they tell you all the time, keep your phone on you because they could call you anytime, day, night, middle of the night, anytime. Soon as that organ comes in, they call you. I had a bad habit of going to the restroom and not taking my phone with me.
Mhm.
So this particular morning, let me go back a little bit. I get a call from my pre-op nurse saying, Latrice, you've been accepted. They're going to place you on the list and you just have to wait for the letter to come. Once you get the letter is like your stamp of approval. She called me on August 14th. I got the letter the following week, and September 15th, I got my call.
Okay.
And
So
my birthday is October 14th. So it was like August, September, October was just great after great after great. Um, so I got the call. Actually, I was asleep. And for some strange reason, I still to this day do not know why. My phone was on vibrate. All the other days it was on ring. For some strange reason, it was on vibrate. Now I would say the devil be trying. But I got up this particular morning, go to the restroom, and come back, and I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, and I'm like, I'm so tired. I'm gonna take this medicine and lay back down. And the phone slid up under my leg, and it
mhm.
vibrated. And I looked, and I'm like, why is my husband calling me this time of morning? Like that's strange. So I pick up the phone. I'm like, hey, babe, what's up? And he's like, nothing. You okay? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, what are you doing? Sitting here getting ready to take this medicine and lay back down. And he said, well, the transplant team has been calling. They're looking for you. They have an organ. I told them you want it, but they have to hear from you. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you serious? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, let me call them. Call you right back. So I called them. I hung up with him and looked at the phone. They had called me quite a few times,
Oh
left me
wow.
a voicemail message, a text message, and usually they don't do that. Usually, if you don't answer, they'll just go to the next patient. So I
Oh
feel like
wow.
this organ was definitely for me. Like God sent this organ for me. Um, so I called back and I'm like, this is Latrice Slice. And she said, Miss Slice, we have been trying to get in contact with you. We talked to your husband. We have an organ. If you're interested, they'll give you a little bit of information on it regarding the person and where it's at and things like that. So she did tell me it was a state over and it was actually in transit to come my direction if I wanted it. And I was like, yes, I want it. So she said, okay, how long will it take you to get to the hospital? And I had mine out in Baltimore.
Mhm.
So I said 30 minutes. It usually takes about 45 minutes to get down there, and then you have to include parking. For some reason, 30 minutes just shot out of my mouth. I don't know why. But there like was no traffic on 495. There was no traffic on 295. We pulled right up to valet and went in, and all of that was within 30 minutes. Uh,
Wow.
yes. But we walked in and I'm like, I'm missing something. I'm like, babe, did you grab my purse? And he was like, no, why would I grab your purse? I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have anything with me. So I'm like so nervous. I'm like, they're gonna turn us away. So we go into admissions, sit down, and we're talking to the lady. And she's like, oh, no problem. She said, give me some information. What's your address? Give her the address. She said first and last name, verified that, date of birth, social. She was like, yep, we've already pre-registered you. You're good to go. I was like, oh my
Oh
God.
wow.
So yeah, so everything ran smooth in regards to the transplant. My husband said about a little over 2 hours after taking me in, the surgeon then came out and shook his hand and said, your wife is no longer a type 1 diabetic.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's beautiful. Everything just seems to align and happen perfectly from the
Yeah.
wallet, the 30 minutes for Baltimore.
Yes.
Everything just aligned perfectly. So life after the transplant, tell us about that.
So life after has been awesome. I'm not going to say that everything ran smooth as soon as I got the transplant. And again, everybody's different. So my body trying to accept it might be different from your body or a type 1 that's listening. Every case is going to be different because every person is different. So I did run into an issue with running a fever, and we couldn't find out why I was running a fever. They did readmit me right away. They ran a bunch of different tests, and it came back to be like inconclusive. We couldn't figure out why. They labeled it fever of unknown origin, which means it just was a fever that just popped up. And it took about 2 weeks before it went away. It kind of did a slow taper off. But that was about it. And I've been doing advocacy work since then. Um, really, really just trying to get people more aware that this actually is our first cure for type 1 diabetes. It would be the pancreas transplant. And I didn't know either, but they've been doing these since the 80s.
Oh wow. Wow, wow. Before we move on to the next question, I want to ask you, I want to say hi to your cousin Kenneth. He said cuz and uh ton roll says God. I guess we were talking about your story. I guess
Okay. Yes, all God. Take us, and that's definitely all God. I mean, everything from being diagnosed as a child, growing up with it, the car accident, all the stuff in between before even getting to the transplant. And yes, life afterwards is it's awesome. That's why I'm trying my hardest to promote
yeah, so that's what I
this
wanted
thing.
to the next question I wanted to ask you was what made you want to are you an advocate or what would you title yourself now that you are encouraging others to do the same thing you did? What would you call yourself?
I call myself a health advocate
I have
because
that.
I say health advocate because I'm not just touching on diabetes. I'm also talking about organ donation and transplantation as well, and how they work together, which would be me because I was diabetic and now I have this new organ in my body, which is the pancreas. And I kind of tell a story. My son always laughs at the story that I tell in regards to the pancreas and moving into the body. I didn't know that when they're putting your pancreas in, they don't remove your previous pancreas. So I technically have two
Okay.
pancreas, two kidneys, one liver, you know. But I tell a story about how this new pancreas is moved in, and all of the other organs are like, hey, you know, who are you? Who's the new guy? You know, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. And they're like trying to
Uh,
push it out, and that's why that fever came about. And you know, so my son always laughs at when I go into that. I don't want to tell too much of it because I kind of want to try to make it a cartoon if I can. I
yeah, I
think
got
it's
you.
good for children to see. But
I can see it already in my mind. Yeah. But
but life afterwards has been it's been awesome. Like I said, I met a lot of people who didn't know, and I was one who actually didn't know either about this. So when we took the class, it was like, oh wow, and it's like, wasn't that smooth? And oh, okay, well, and so far they hit it on the head. It's been like that smooth. So I
and
don't
William,
do any more finger sticks. I don't do the pump anymore. I'm not doing any injections and getting the air bubbles out. I don't have to deal with any of that. I do take pills, anti-rejection medication twice a day, once in the morning and once at night. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
okay. I'm gonna address some of the comments. William said nothing but God, and Tam said excellent pursuive and information. I think it's a pursuative and information. So the last question is, what after the life after the pancreas? I mean, is it a pancreas? Is it a pancreas?
Pancreas, yes.
After the pancreas? What made you say, okay, now I want to be a health advocate? Like, what made you say I want to enter into this space and talk to people about it? Like, what's it like? How did that come about?
So I've always loved helping people, whether it was in the health field or baking a pie. I'm just one of those people that just love to help people. So that I think that's why when I ran for office, it meant so much to me because I was like, wow, I'll really be able to help people. We unfortunately didn't win, of course, you know, Westmore won, but Westmore, he's real cool people. I like him. But yes, I've always wanted to help people, and when this opportunity kind of presented itself to me, I was like, okay, I think this is my calling. And I prayed about it. And God just kept pushing me forward. So I'm still being pushed forward by God, just doing his work is really all it is. I'm just doing his work.
Oh, okay. Nice. That's beautiful. I want to read Miss Tam's comment again. It says, excellent perspective and information. Thank you, Miss Tam. And thank you all for joining us tonight, and keep doing what you're doing. So, where else can we find you? Where are you going to be doing any of the speaking engagements coming up? What you got planned for this summer? What's next for you?
Um,
I know you have a nonprofit you're working on.
I
So,
do. So you can always catch me on my website. My phone number is listed, all of my contact information at www.shininglights.org. And lights is spelled Lytes. Shining Lights. Shining Lights. I left the ink out. I'm sorry. ShiningLightsInc.org. So it's www.shininglightsinc.org. And lights is Lytes. I do have an event coming up on Saturday, May 6th. This is hosted by WHUR and I forget her name, Thompson. But it's going to be at the Sports and Learning Complex. I'm drawing a blank on the names, but it's going to be at the Sports and Learning Complex. Again, that's going to be Saturday, May 6th from 10 to 4 p.m. It could extend a little longer, but it's like a big health event. There are going to be a lot of different booths in there, things of that sort. So Shining Lights Inc. will be in there. And yeah, so
is it,
please.
was it a fee? I was just at I sell shea butter with my self care line,
Yes, you
and
do. Yes.
I was just at the Sports and Learning Complex like 2 weeks ago. Was it a fee? Is it a fee to be a vendor there, or you can just
It is a fee. Yes, it is a fee to be a vendor. And I think the earlier you pay, you got like a discount or something. So,
okay?
but yeah, there is it's a slight
So
fee
even if I'm
to
not
be
a
a vendor.
vendor, since it's down the street, I live in Upper Marlboro. You live in Landover. I
Mhm.
can come by and meet you in person for once.
Definitely, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And
Anybody
then
in the area, come
Miss
check her
Miss
out.
Amy, who's on here, she has an event coming up that I'll be speaking up for her on May 8th. Um,
Okay.
so she'll give me some more details on that, and then I'll pass that along to you. And what else is going on? We have something else coming up.
Oh, and you was on Fox 5
Mhm.
News. Like, let's
Yes,
clap it up for that.
I was just last Saturday. I was on Fox
Yes.
5 with Maureen Ume. She did a special segment for actually it's for um Nash. I get the letters mixed up all the time because I'm talking about mine. Um, let me just grab it. Give me one.
Mhm.
So UNOS, UNOS is United Network for Organ Sharing,
Mhm.
and they teamed up with some others. So we've passed the million mark for transplants,
Oh,
and
wow.
this is for the United States of America. So this whole month is pretty much dedicated to organ donations of any kind, whether it's a heart, lungs, pancreas, kidneys, whatever it may be. But I do also like to bring awareness to kidneys by themselves because the kidney list is so long. We're talking like 5 to 7 years to get a kidney unless you have a living donor of your own. So if you don't have a donor and you're sitting on the list waiting, that's how far out it is. So that's why we're trying to encourage more people to donate. And I talk to a lot of people that's like, yeah, I donate. Some people don't know if they're still on the donors list or not. Some people just say that just to say it. I feel as though you shouldn't just say it just to say it. You're either going to help or you're not. And we need, I mean, the United States is huge. It's full of a lot of people. So like this right here is like a million is great,
Mhm.
but we need more. We need a lot more.
Okay.
So part of Shining Lights Inc. is to help get this information out. We want a million plus plus plus. Like, so that's my perspective on things.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight for us on the Queens talking, telling their story and sharing with others and wanting to help others. I say a lot of times that a lot of people, a lot of Black women too, we don't really like to help others do better or be better. We tend to go against each other. So it's a beautiful thing that you overcame. You're no longer a type 1 diabetic because you got a kidney transplant. Um, and you want to help others, you want to spread awareness, and that's a beautiful thing to do because we don't see a lot of that, and that's very encouraging and empowering. So thank you for doing that, and we celebrate
Thank
you.
you, Queen. Thank you for this platform. And I forgot
Yes.
to mention that Leslie and I will also be linking up to do some things as well. So be on the
Yes.
lookout for that. Yes,
Yes.
I look forward to it.
Yes, I cannot wait. And thank you everybody from the comments who joined. I think that I answered everybody in the comments, but thank you all for the participation, and I will see you guys later.
Thank you. Oh, and I just remember one last thing.